Hi, thanks for joining us today. We're here to talk about cycle time reduction secrets. This is part 3 in a series that we're doing. Mike, I appreciate you joining us. This is Mike Boyd. My name is Darren Harville, and we're here in our Experience Center room that's a part of our commitment to you to help inform you and collaborate with you. What are you going to show us today, Mike?
So again, talking about reducing our machining cycle time and focusing on that non-cut time, I'm going to talk about a Makino specific developed M code. And this is a very powerful M code because previously we talked about taking serial process, very sequential processes, and taking them into a parallel process. This M code, this one M code, takes 4 serial tasks and puts them all in parallel. Very powerful M code. It's called M319. So specifically this M code, Darren, it opens the ATC shutter. It orients the spindle, turns your coolant off, all at the same time while you're moving to the second reference position, which is your tool change position. So this is specifically designed for tool changes. So if you look at the code, this one code, the G91, G30, X0, Y0, Z0, M319, does all those 4 tasks into one parallel process. So it saves you a lot of cycle time. It could save you upwards to 2 or 3 seconds per tool change compared to the alternative, which is kind of a historically traditional way of programming, and that is shown graphically at the bottom, and that is all those tasks programmed independently. Again, a very serial process, and graphically you can see your savings of all these different things happening all at the same time, as opposed to the serial process. And then your delta cycle time, again, could be 2 or 3 seconds per tool. Now, if you think about that, over a 30 or 60 tool process, that is a huge, substantial savings.
Great, thanks, Mike. We're going to go out on the floor and see this in live action. We have an A51NX set up. You've got a demo ready to show everybody, so you're going to be able to show us how this can save time.
Absolutely.
Great, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Let's go take a look.
Follow me. So this demonstration, we're going to show that powerful Makino M code. That's that M319. So if you remember, M319 takes a very serial process, actually 4 different things, and moves them into a parallel process. So you're saving a lot of time by taking those individual tasks and putting them on top of each other. So it's going to stop the spindle, it's going to orient the spindle, it's going to stop the coolant, and open the ATC shutter door all at the same time. So this first series of movements I'm going to show you is more the traditional way, where you have all your separate M codes. All those M codes that do those same things, but again, in a very sequential serial process. And I'm going to walk through, when I get to that point, I'm going to single block so you can see those actions live right here on the demonstration. So let's do it. So we're going to move over. We're going to turn everything on here. It's in a dwell right now. So I've got it in single block because this is the traditional serial process. So the dwell is over, and now I'm going to move into, first thing, the spindle off. Single blocking again. The second action is your spindle orient, getting ready for tool change. And then the next code is your M9 coolant off. So I'm going to take it out of single block so it moves over to the tool change position and changes tools. But this time we're going to implement M319. And right here I'm going to again single block it right here, 10-second dwell. So this next line that you see, that motion, you see that positioning to the tool changer, along with the M319, you're going to see this activity stop all at once. Let's execute. All those processes, all those steps, all those 4 steps just happened. I'm going to take single block off. It's going to move over to the tool change position and change tools. So now, as we mentioned, we're going to record this cycle time. I'm going to crank everything up 100% so we can get this time, and you can see the difference between the serial process, and then the parallel process, that Makino M code, very powerful, M319. Start up, recording the time. And again, this is the serial process where everything is sequential. So spindle stop, orient, coolant off, move over, ATC door open, and tool change. This next one now is implementing the M319, where you do all those steps sequentially in parallel. Look at all that time that you saved right there. You see that motion? Everything happened all at the same time in parallel. Now let's see just how much time we saved by looking at our macro variable screen. And this one we're looking at macro variable 704 and 705. So again, 704 is your traditional process, very serial. And that time is at 14, let's call it 15 seconds. But when you implement M319, looking at macro variable 705, look at the savings. It's down to 11.3 seconds. So a big savings just on one tool change. Just imagine that savings across multiple tool changes in your process.
Thanks for doing those demonstrations for us, Mike. And if any of you would be interested in learning more about our experience centers or would like to have a one-on-one with a subject matter expert, please reach out to us. We can set that up for you. And right now we're wanting to take some questions from you. Anything that you're wanting to know that we haven't covered yet, go to the top right corner. You'll see Q&A listed there. You go to the bottom, type in your question, and we'll be happy to answer them. Well, Mike, I appreciate again showing us that demonstration. One of the things that's always interesting to hear about is some of the different things that Makino is able to develop. And I know that with the premium high performance machines that Makino provides, having the expertise from people like yourself and other people on your team to develop some of these tips and some of these different things that can help customers save cycle time can really make a difference. And I know over several decades, we've been developing a number of different things to help customers, and it's really appreciated. I know we hear from customers that say that they really appreciate that. Mike, one of the things we're going to do here as we get started, we got some questions are starting to come in. And as we're gathering those up, I'm going to start off by just doing a short question, a polling question for the audience here. The question is, have you previously used a special M code developed by Makino? So we'll let people answer that. And while we're waiting for those answers, again, Mike, I know that you've been with Makino quite a few years. How does it come about that some of these different ideas for an M code like 319 come about?
Oh, it's all about experience and the needs out there in the field from customers, looking to save, seconds, minutes out of their time. You identify areas of opportunity and that gets fed back to the factory, and, our design engineers work at it. And here we are, we get these special developed M codes out there that help to do just that.
Well, the poll question that we asked, it looks like about 57% of the people have answered yes, that they have used a special M code developed by Makino. So there's some people out there that haven't, so it's great today they're getting exposure to one of those. There's several others, and Mike, I know we're going to be covering some of those other special M codes in addition to this M319 in future episodes that we're going to be covering. So that's great. So let's get to some of the questions that we have coming in. The first one coming in from Mitch. He's asking, does the M319, does it generally come from the factory with M319?
Yes. Yeah. So 9001 M6. So what that is every time the CNC program, the machine sees the M6, it executes actually the macro program number 9001. And this is for moving to the ATC position, doing those things and getting ready for your tool change. So within the 9001, there is an M319.
Okay.
And that's a good place to put M319. The program that you saw and what we like to do with the placement of M319 is after your tool path and you pull your Z retract out away from the part, then you give your 3-axis position over to the second reference, which is your ATC position, along with the M319. And that's where, again, in the demonstration you saw, that's where you get that savings of the sequential process, putting everything in the parallel on top of each other and seeing that savings.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And we have another question from Edwin, who's asking, does M9 apply to just the coolant command, or would it also work for air?
So M9, so that's a good question. I believe it does work for air. So M77 turns your through spindle air on, and yeah, I believe M9 does turn that off.
Okay. And another follow-up question is it easier to use M661, M6 replacement?
Is it easier to use M661, M6 replacement? Because I'm not understanding exactly the question there, Mitch.
Okay, maybe
So
if
that's
you
the
could
simultaneous tool change, B-axis rotation, which we package that nicely into the 09020 macro call, and that's using M606.
okay, if that doesn't answer your question, Mitch, you want to clarify that, go ahead and give us some additional information to clarify
Well,
that.
let me add a little bit to that, Mitch.
Sure.
So our next episode, part 4 coming up, I go in depth and talk about how we do that more, on the Makino M code that couples the B-axis rotation with the tool change. So our part 4 coming up will address that. So hopefully you can tune in.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike. The part 4 episode, we do not have a date yet scheduled that it'll air, but be on the lookout for that. You'll be seeing some notices for that, and it won't be long before we're doing the part 4, so keep an eye out for that. Another question we've got, Mike, is from Casey. He wants to know if he can get a list of special limb codes for an A51NX.
Yeah, so you should have the M code manual along with your machining center. If you don't have that, by all means, let us know. Another good place to look is at mymakino.com. That's the MyMakino portal, where you can order parts and access machine manuals. So just let us know if you don't have access to that, and we'll get that for you.
Yeah, and Mike, that's great to point that out, that they can go to the MyMakino portal. There's lots of information. I know that if customers log into that, they can see their specific machines, the specific model machines, serial numbers that they have, and get information specifically for them. So yeah, that's great to point that out. Another question we have, Mike, is does M319 work on legacy Makino controls like the Pro 5?
It does. It actually works all the way back to Pro 3. So Pro 3, Pro 5, and Pro 6. And I want to also point out that this is specifically for our A series horizontal machining centers. This is applicable to those machines.
Okay. And here's a question from Gregory. He's asking about a laser tool check. He wants to confirm if he should be programming after that.
So referring to an NC4 Renishaw laser, I assume. So run it through the laser, do your tool breakage detection in the work zone with that particular option on the machine. You can use M319 right after that as well.
Great. And Nick is asking us, can I calculate a moment of inertia on heavier top load weight parts when rotating the C-axis?
So the C-axis referring to a fifth axis, and I don't believe some of our products that have the C-axis integrated may have AIC, inertia active control. That's a feature we'll talk about again. Another part coming up that we're going to talk about. But IAC measures the weight basically on your rotary axis, and it can improve the acceleration, deceleration settings, effectively giving you better cycle time. The C-axis, I'm going to have to look back on our 5-axis equipment and get with our product manager to see if IAC is available for our fifth or C-axis. That's
okay. Okay, thanks, Mike. We'll get back to him to clarify that then. And then another question we have is, it's referring to, I know I hear some customers talk about how important it is to keep as much coolant in the machine as possible, right? Sometimes you have issues where with chips going out through the chip conveyor that you can have a lot of coolant loss through that. And so this question, the person is asking, since the tool change occurs soon after the coolant turns off, is there a concern of more coolant being carried out of the work zone and into the ATC?
I guess in general, it's always a concern. You have to just monitor each tool change to see if you're getting that. There is still, drawback on the through spindle coolant. There's still that.
Yeah, and explain that a little bit further, Mike, to make sure people understand what you mean by that.
So there's drawbacks. So through spindle coolant, when that's turned off, there is a certain time for the machine to actually pull the coolant out of the spindle. So that is still there. So it doesn't negate that drawback time on the coolant. But again, you have to monitor every tool change to see if you are getting some of the drawback or some of the coolant going out to your ATC. In that case, you might have to alter your method for that one tool.
Okay. And are there any conditions where M319 should not be used?
Oh, so that's a good one because I run into that. So M319, as you saw, it opens the shutter door as well. Sometimes people like to put optional stops after, right before a tool change. And in that case, if you have op stop on and you stop right after the M319, the machine will be sitting there with the ATC shutter door open. So if you want to stop the cycle to do anything, then you have to go in and you have to issue the M code through MDI to close the shutter door. So you have to be careful. You have to watch where your M1s or M0s program stops are after the M319. So just be aware of that because I see that and I see it often.
Okay, and another question came in related to that, asking, does it matter where the M319 is programmed relative to the other codes?
Yeah, again, as I mentioned, as soon as your tool path is finished and you pulled your Z out to a safe retract area, we put the G91, G30, all three axes, X, Y, and Z, 0, taking it to the second reference position, that's your ATC position, on the same line as the M319. So all those actions happen all in that one line. That's a perfect placement for the M319.
Okay. And looks like we have just a couple more questions as we're wrapping up here. This one is asking about any parameter settings that are required to make M319 work. Mike, back in part 2 that we did before this one, you were showing us and explaining how multi-axis moves work whenever you program on the same line as G43. There was a FANUC parameter 5001, had a bit that had to be set. But in this case with M319, is there any consideration like that?
No, it's standard M319. No parameter changes need to be made. Right as soon as it's installed, you start using M319.
Great. Okay, that makes it nice and easy. And to wrap things up here, There's a question about presentation slide that you had showed, Mike. Is that available? And I do want to point out to people, if you go up to your top right-hand corner, there's handouts listed there. And if you go into that, you will find a PDF called Presentation Handout. That slide is the one that Mike showed. And you're also going to see some other information in there that you can download. There's contact information. There's an article there, and there's also a page out of a manual, a couple pages out of the manual that give a little more description about the use of M319. So you can download that, and if you have any other questions, if that doesn't answer the questions you might have, just let us know. We'll be glad to get those answers to you. So Mike is,
there's
yes.
one more thing that I was reminded of yesterday talking to a colleague here is that there's another set of powerful M codes. You know, it's kind of a common theme. We talked about our next part. We're going to dig more into some more of these special M codes. But one set of M codes I like to just mention today, it's not necessarily a cycle time reduction set of parameters, but it's more of a reducing your unplanned downtime. And that is M36 or M36. And what that M code does, it's a prior tool check. And we like to execute that M code at the beginning of your cutter path of your machining program to look at all the tools in your magazine. So the format is M36, and then the next line is what tool do you want to look at the status of. So it's looking to see if the tool is in the magazine and if it's available for use, if the status of the tool is not in an alarm status. So it saves you from getting further down in your cycle when you actually go to use that tool and it's in an alarm state for, say, its tool life, it's out of life. You have a stoppage right in the middle of your cycle. So now you're in a restart condition, trying to figure out what's going on. It helps with reducing the unplanned downtime. So M36, Darren, and then to close it out after the T commands, M37 closes that out and allows you to continue with your machining program.
Okay, thank you, Mike. You gave him a little extra something today.
I
That's
sure did.
great. Well, that's for the people that hung around for the rest of the Q&A. They got a little something additional. And for the rest of you, remember we've got part 4 that's going to be coming out. Mike, you're going to be going further into some special Makino M codes. There's a few more that we're going to be showing and demonstrating in part 4. So everybody be on the lookout for that, and we'll be happy to show that to you and looking forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you.